The house had been searched top to bottom. Nothing seemed out of place until Thor stopped cold, stared at the floor, and began growling. Then he did something no one expected. He pulled toward the basement door. What they found down there would unravel a case long thought closed, and expose something far worse. The farmhouse on Hollow Pine Road didn't look like a crime scene. Its white paint had long since chipped away, revealing weather-beaten boards. A single swing still hung from the large oak out front, swaying gently in the morning wind. There was no yellow tape. No blood. No smell. Just silence. For Officer Wren Maddox, the scene was all too familiar, rural, isolated, and untouched for just long enough to feel off. She stood with her arms crossed, boots planted firmly on the packed gravel driveway, and scanned the property as her K9 partner, Thor, sat calmly beside her. Thor was a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois, lean and powerful, with a black muzzle and alert amber eyes. He was trained in SAR, search and rescue, but had assisted in narcotics and cadaver searches when needed. And today, they needed everything he had. Sheriff Grady Parsons approached from the porch. "You ready, Maddox?" Wren nodded. "What's the call again?" "Anonymous tip. Claimed the property might be related to the Robinson case." Wren's heart skipped. "The missing boy?" Parsons nodded. "Disappeared 10 years ago. Case went cold in 17. And someone just now decides to say something?" Apparently they had a change of heart. Wren didn't buy it, but she'd learned not to argue with orders. Not on the scene. She reached down and unhooked Thor's lead. "Search," she said softly. Thor bolted forward, not recklessly, but with focused energy, weaving between the porch steps and front doorway, sniffing corners, scanning the air. His nose twitched, his posture high and stiff. Inside, the house smelled like rotten mold, but not like death. Wren moved carefully through the rooms, watching Thor's body language. Kitchen, clear. Living room, dusty, but no signals. Back bedroom, nothing. Basement, sealed. Wren frowned. "Sheriff," she called. "Did the records say anything about the basement being locked?" Parsons looked up from his clipboard. "Didn't know it had one." Wren examined the narrow trap door in the pantry floor. It was nailed shut, for heavy nails, weathered and half sunk into the rotting wood. Clearly closed for years. But that's where Thor had stopped. He stood directly over it, tail low, body tight, and let out a single deep growl. Wren froze. She had learned to trust that sound. "Something's down there," she said. Parsons called in for a crowbar. Deputy Laurel arrived minutes later with the tools and began prying at the boards. The wood cracked and groaned under the pressure. All the while, Thor never moved. He stared at the boards like they were hiding something alive. When the fourth nail came loose, a rush of cold air burst upward. Wren felt it before she smelled it, damp, metallic, old. "Lights," she said. A small LED flashlight was handed over, and she clipped it to her vest. The basement stairs creaked as she descended, Thor close behind. The basement was small. Cramped. Old stone and dirt walls, reinforced by rotting beams. Cobwebs hung from every angle, and puddles dotted the floor where moisture had seeped in over the years. But it wasn't empty. Against the far wall, obscured by an old shelving unit and covered by a dusty tarp, was something that didn't belong. Wren approached slowly, heart racing. She pulled back the tarp. A rusted metal crib. Inside, old blankets, disintegrating toys. One of them, a small blue bear, had initials on the foot. J.R. Jeremiah Robinson, Wren whispered. Her breath caught in her throat. But that wasn't all. Thor moved to the left, toward a panel in the wall that looked loose. He growled again, more urgent now. Wren pulled the panel aside. Behind it, a small alcove. Inside the alcove, bones. Tiny. Human. Sheriff Parsons descended the stairs moments later, face pale. Sweet Lord. Wren stood, arms shaking slightly, her flashlight catching the edges of the tiny skeleton. No reports of remains ever being found, she said. They assumed the boy had been abducted and moved. They were wrong. Parsons took a step back and raised his radio. We need forensics, now. Full team. We've got remains, likely juvenile. But Wren was already focused on something else. Thor had moved again, this time toward the corner behind an old furnace. He barked. Not aggressively, but as if calling attention. Wren rushed over. A suitcase. She knelt and unzipped it carefully. Inside. Clothes. Tapes. Photographs. Hundreds. Some labeled. Some stained. Parsons moved to her side, mouth falling open. Is that? Wren nodded. It's a cache. Of what? Evidence. The house on Hollow Pine Road had hidden its secrets for a decade. Quietly. Without resistance. Without witnesses. But all it took was a dog named Thor, trained not to ignore his instincts, to uncover what the trained eye never could. He hadn't barked when they searched the rooms. He hadn't reacted to the backyard. But when he reached that pantry door, he knew. As the crime scene team arrived and began photographing the basement, Wren sat on the porch with Thor by her side. She gave him a long scratch behind the ears. You found him, she whispered. You found what no one else could. Thor didn't react. Just stared into the woods, alert, still, waiting. Because for him, the job wasn't over. Open. The small town of Ashwick hadn't seen this kind of attention in years. By mid-morning, news vans lined Hollow Pine Road. Yellow tape encircled the farmhouse like a wound, fluttering in the breeze. Officers kept back reporters as forensics teams descended into the basement one at a time. What they found would take days to process. But the first discoveries were already rewriting a decade-old tragedy. Sheriff Parsons stood with a clipboard, watching the team carefully extract the remains from the hidden alcove. The skeleton was delicate, partial, small bones curled unnaturally inward. Around it, tattered fabric and fragments of a blue pajama top. The lab team murmured quietly. Measurements. Estimates. All of it leading toward one horrifying conclusion. Male. Age range between 6 and 8, the tech said. Estimated time of death, likely between 9 and 10 years ago. Parsons closed his eyes briefly. Jeremiah was 7 when he vanished. No one said anything else. Above ground, Wren sat on the porch steps, the blue bear in her hands. She ran her fingers along the stitching, half unraveled, the thread fraying after years in the dark. Thor sat beside her, unmoving. She looked at him. You were right. He blinked slowly, almost like a nod. Then his ears twitched. Wren stood. Something wasn't sitting right. She walked to the SUV and pulled out her laptop. Connected to the station's database, she reopened the original missing child case. Jeremiah Robinson, age 7, disappeared from his backyard while playing alone after school. No signs of struggle. No witnesses. Last known person to see him, his neighbor. Wait, Wren whispered. She pulled up the address from the old file. It wasn't Hollow Pine Road. It was 3 miles east. A completely different part of town. Sheriff Parsons joined her. What is it? This isn't the Robinson home. It's not even close. Parsons frowned. Then why was Jeremiah here? Wren scrolled further. The property was listed as vacant for nearly 12 years. Prior owners moved out in '08. No rental agreements since. Parsons cursed softly. So who had the keys? Down in the basement, Deputy Laurel found the first clue. Behind the furnace, buried beneath layers of dust, was a stack of VHS tapes. Each labeled by year. No cases. Just raw, unmarked cassettes and one old mini camcorder. Laurel carefully bagged and tagged them, then passed them to Wren. She drove them straight to the station. By noon, they had set up a review room. Sheriff Parsons, Wren, and a technician named Jay sat in front of a monitor as the first tape played. Static. Then, a child's voice. Laughter. Then a sudden shift in tone, quiet sobbing. The camera panned to a crib. The same one found in the basement. A hand entered the frame. Male. Gloved. The screen cut to black. Parsons turned off the monitor. "We're not watching the rest," he said. "We send this straight to state investigators." Wren agreed. But she noticed something. "Wait," she said. "Rewind 10 seconds. Jay cued the footage again. In the lower left corner, something barely visible, carpet. Red, with a tear in the pattern. Wren's eyes widened. "That's not from the basement." Jay frowned. "How can you tell?" "The basement has concrete and dirt floors. No carpet." "Then this was filmed somewhere else." "Exactly." Back at the farmhouse, Thor began pacing. He sniffed along the front wall, then turned sharply and headed for the back side of the house, an area no one had touched yet. The reporters were gone for lunch. Only Wren, Parsons, and a few deputies remained. Wren watched as Thor froze near a crumbled flower bed. "What is it, boy?" Thor barked once. Then began digging. Parsons joined her moments later. "We should stop him." "We've already." But Wren held up a hand. "Let him." After 30 seconds, Thor stopped. His paws were covered in dirt. Wren knelt and brushed away the soil. A hatch. Much smaller than the basement door. Handmade. "Get a crowbar," she ordered. When the hatch was opened, a secondary crawlspace revealed itself, only 2 feet high, maybe 6 feet deep. Inside, old blankets. Water bottles. And one more bear. Identical to the one from the basement. Except this one was newer. Not torn. And the initials stitched on the foot were different. TR. Wren sat back in the grass, chills racing up her arms. "This wasn't for Jeremiah," she said. Parsons stared. "You think there was another child?" She nodded slowly. "I think we've only uncovered half the truth." Later that evening, a woman called the station anonymously. Her voice was quiet. Trembling. She said she'd been watching the news. And she knew the farmhouse. "It used to belong to my brother," she said. "He had problems." "What kind of problems?" Wren asked. A pause. "He was obsessed with kids. Obsessed with silence. Always said children were easier when they didn't speak." Wren asked her name. The woman hesitated. Then hung up. Thor lay on the station floor as Wren processed the day's notes. He let out a small whine. Wren leaned down. "You think there's more, don't you?" Thor blinked. She pulled out the second bear, TR, and held it up. "Then let's find the one who owned this." The sheriff's department buzzed with an electricity it hadn't felt in years. Detectives from the state office arrived that morning. Analysts, forensic techs, and one grim-faced FBI agent named Keaton. The farmhouse basement was officially declared a federal crime scene. Media was restricted. Drones circled overhead. And inside a small room labeled Evidence 4, 2 bears sat side by side, nearly twins in size and material. But their initials were different. JR was obvious, Jeremiah Robinson. But TR? That changed everything. Wren paced in front of the whiteboard as Sheriff Parsons filled in dates and locations. Their map of Ashwick now had multiple red circles, one at the farmhouse, one at Jeremiah's last known home, and another at an address 10 miles west. This, Parsons said, tapping the third circle, was the home of a Timothy Reynolds. He went missing 5 years ago. Case never linked to Jeremiah's. Because no one thought to, Wren said. Different sides of town. Different ages. But the same bear. Keaton, the FBI agent, looked up. There's no physical link between Reynolds and the Hollow Pine house? There is now, Wren replied. Thor found the second bear buried in a crawlspace. Same stitching. Same thread. Same materials. But different initials. And no one in forensics caught this? Keaton asked. They weren't looking for it. Meanwhile, in the main hall, Thor sat by the department's front door, body still, ears perked. He hadn't relaxed since the night before. He paced more, barked less, but stayed watchful. Laura, one of the station's admin staff, came by with a piece of chicken in foil. Figured the hero deserved breakfast. Thor sniffed, gently took the meat, then returned to his place by the window. Wren noticed. He doesn't want food. He wants to keep working. He knows something's unfinished, Parsons said. Wren sat down next to him. What is it, boy? Thor looked up, then turned his head toward the hallway leading to the evidence room. Wren stood and walked toward the room. Inside, she stared again at the two bears. The second one had something odd on its ear, a pinprick mark, barely visible. She grabbed a magnifying glass. There was thread. Different from the rest. She clipped it carefully and unraveled the corner. A tiny note was tucked inside the seam. A name. A location. And a date. TR storage. 11, Larrabee. She stepped back, stunned. It's a message. Sheriff Parsons read the note twice. Larrabee? Industrial lot, Wren said. East End. Old textile storage facility. Abandoned since 2014. And the date? Matches Reynolds' disappearance. Keaton stood. Let's go. Wren looked to Thor. You ready? He stood immediately. The team arrived at the Larrabee storage complex just before dusk. The sky hung gray and flat, clouds low and heavy. The building itself was an industrial relic, graffiti-stained bricks, busted-out windows, chain-link fences rusted at every post. Unit 11, Wren said. They moved slowly. Cautiously. Thor was the first to stop at the rusted door of Unit 11. He sniffed once, then let out a short bark. Wren gave the all-clear. Keaton and two agents cut the lock. The door creaked open. The air hit them first, stale, like wet cloth and metal. The flashlight beams sliced through the dark, revealing a room filled with boxes, old mannequins, dusty rolls of carpet. Thor walked ahead, nose to the ground. Then he stopped at a locked freezer chest. He barked. Louder this time. Wren approached slowly. This isn't standard equipment. Keaton nodded to one of the agents. Open it. The lid cracked with effort. Inside, they found documents. Stacks of folders, all carefully preserved in vacuum-sealed plastic. Each labeled with initials. Each with photos. All children. Wren scanned the top file, TR003. She flipped it open. Timothy Reynolds. Age 9. Missing 2018. Next file, AK004. Then JS005. Sheriff Parsons stepped back, horrified. These weren't random abductions. This was organized. Cataloged. Keaton muttered, these weren't just trophies. This was a database. Wren flipped through more pages, addresses, social security numbers, behavior reports. Some even had compliance ratings. She felt sick. Thor growled again. His head turned toward toward a false wall at the back. They approached cautiously. Keaton pried it open. Behind it, a tunnel. Cinder block walls. No markings. A steel door at the end. Thor barked. Once. Then again. Keaton motioned. We go in quiet. Weapons drawn. Wren nodded and reached for her sidearm. They reached the door. It had no handle. Just a biometric pad, long dead. Keaton stepped back and motioned to the tactical agent. Breach it. Boom. The blast echoed through the tunnel. Inside, the lights flickered on automatically. A room with cameras, recording decks, storage drives. Empty now. But not forgotten. In the corner, another crib. Empty. Another bear. TR. Wren dropped to her knees. Sophie Reynolds' face appeared in her memory, blonde hair, gap-toothed smile from the missing flyer. They had found where she was kept. But she wasn't here. Thor walked in, sniffed the air. He stopped. Saturday. And looked up at the ceiling. Wren followed his gaze. A vent. Slightly ajar. Someone had escaped. Back at the sheriff's office, Wren updated the board. 2 known victims, Jeremiah and Timothy. But now, 5 new names. 5 missing children, previously thought unrelated. All with files found in the Larrabee chest. All with tags that began with 2 letters. And one common thread. None of them had ever been searched for correctly. Because no one had looked in the right place. Until Thor pulled toward the basement. The room felt colder than it should have. Not because of the temperature, but because of what it now represented. The makeshift operations center inside the Ashwick Sheriff's Department had become the pulse of an investigation no one saw coming. What started with a missing boy in a locked basement had now evolved into the exposure of a shadow network, intentional, methodical, and terrifying in its reach. Wren stood quietly in front of the whiteboard as Parsons updated the case timeline. 5 children, he said. All previously classified as isolated disappearances. Different counties. Different years. Different jurisdictions. Agent Keaton circled the newly added photo of Amira Kwan, age 10, missing since 2019. All with matching documentation found in the freezer cache, he said. Cataloged. Processed. And possibly kept here, Wren added, pointing at a wide satellite image of the Larrabee property. That tunnel room wasn't just a vault. It was an operational hub. Parsons exhaled. So where are they now? That was the question no one could answer. Thor lay near Wren's desk, still and silent. He hadn't slept properly in days. His eyes, though calm, stayed fixed on the door. Waiting. Listening. When Wren reached down to stroke behind his ears, he nudged her palm softly, like a reminder. She looked down. You still feel it, huh? He responded with a low breath and shifted his gaze to the wall. She followed it. The only thing on that side of the board was the timeline. She frowned. Wait. Wren pulled a printout from the evidence table, the original disappearance report for Jeremiah Robinson. She read aloud, last seen outside his home at 3:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. No sounds. No signs of struggle. Next, she flipped to Timothy Reynolds' file. Last seen on a Wednesday. Playing outside. Same with Amira Kwan. Same with James Sandoval. Same pattern. Wren circled the dates. It's not random. Keaton stepped beside her. Same weekday. Same time range. No forced entry. No alarms. No known suspects. Wren nodded. These weren't opportunistic abductions. They were planned. Rehearsed. Parsons looked up. So what's the link? Wren pointed at the reports. Every child was last seen within 12 minutes of a white utility van reported in the vicinity. Keaton raised an eyebrow. You're saying the van wasn't just transportation, it was part of the protocol. And if it is, Wren said, then the van might have been used again. Maybe even yesterday. They reached out to DOT surveillance, requesting traffic footage on every rural route out of Ashwick within the last 48 hours. By afternoon, they had something. Footage from a highway toll booth 19 miles out, a white unmarked van, faded license plate, partially covered in mud. Timestamp, 6:48 a.m., the morning after the raid on Larrabee. Heading north. Wren and Keaton made a plan. They pulled out a map of central Idaho, drawing a circle 100 miles wide around the last ping. Keaton pointed. These are the only 3 towns that fit the route and are isolated enough to hide someone for this long. Parsons nodded. You taking Thor? Wren clipped his leash. He's already halfway in the truck. Their destination was Linton Ridge, a town of under 300 people tucked into the mountains, known mostly for its logging road and cold storage units. They arrived just after dusk. Keaton contacted the local marshal. The team moved quietly, no sirens. They started scanning small industrial lots just outside town. Wren unhooked Thor's leash and said, "Track." He sniffed the air, tail still, body low. Then he moved. They followed him along a gravel access road, passing several trailers, one burned-out truck, and a half-collapsed shed. Thor stopped at a concrete bunker built into a hillside. It had no signage. One metal door. No windows. Keaton approached the lock pad. Biometric. He stepped back. Let's do this carefully. Wren nodded. She crouched beside Thor. You sure, boy? He looked at her once, then back at the door. And barked. The entry team breached at 7:34 p.m. Inside, rows of empty shelving, office equipment, surveillance cameras, none working. At first, it looked abandoned. Then they found the back wall. And behind it? A room. Underground. No windows. Lead-lined. With 7 beds. All child-sized. One with a tattered pink blanket and a hand-stitched corner that read, AK. Wren stood at the door of the room, speechless. Keaton radioed in. We've got confirmation. Physical evidence tying at least 3 missing children to this facility. We need to secure and scan it all. Wren knelt beside one bed where Thor had stopped. She brushed aside the blanket. There, beneath it, was a single sheet of paper. Scanned, then hand-marked. A name. A date. A transfer code. Subject TR. In transit. Drop zone, August 15th. That was tomorrow. Back at the station, Wren updated the team. They're not done. One of the children, they're moving him or her tomorrow. This wasn't just a holding site. It was a checkpoint. Keaton stood by the window. They're not moving randomly. They're executing stages. Quietly. One child at a time. Probably rerouting them through locations like this one. Wren stared at the date again. August 15th. Less than 24 hours. Parsons made the call. Full mobilization. All points bulletin. We locked down every road heading north by sunrise. At the ranch house that night, Wren slept near Thor, a sleeping bag laid out on the station floor. Sophie Reynolds' face lingered in her mind, the child from TR's file who still hadn't been found. Wren whispered, "We're going to find her." Thor's ears perked. He lifted his head. And stared toward the door again. Because he knew. She was still out there. At 4:32 a.m., the command center erupted into motion. patrol units were dispatched across northern Idaho, creating a dragnet that spanned 60 miles. Traffic cameras were activated. Tolls were watched. Forest trails and river crossings were sealed off with mobile barricades and ranger patrols. The mission was simple: intercept the van. If the transfer was set for August 15th, and the document recovered from the bunker was accurate, then the child referred to as TR would be on the move today. And there would only be one chance to stop it. Wren stood beside Thor in the pre-dawn chill. Her breath fogged in the mountain air. Thor sat like stone, eyes watching the road without blinking. She knelt beside him. "You ready to finish this?" He flicked his ears. Then leaned his head against her shoulder. That was enough. By 6 a.m., Keaton had triangulated 3 potential drop zones based on topography and known disappearances, remote spots just off old mining roads that connected through one central highway, Route 28. Wren circled the area on the map. "Which one's the quietest?" Keaton pointed at a gravel turnoff deep in Clearwater Forest. "Old Ranger Station. Abandoned. It's outside the cell range. If I were trying to vanish a child, I'd choose the place no one goes." Wren tapped the location. "Then that's where we're going." They arrived at the ranger station just after 8 a.m. Wren, Thor, Keaton, and 2 tactical units set up a perimeter inside the dense forest line. The building itself was no bigger than a cabin, overgrown, roof partially collapsed, but still structurally intact. It looked innocent. And that's what scared them. Wren looked to Thor. He was already moving. He sniffed the old footpath, bypassed the main door, and stopped at a stack of firewood behind the structure. He growled. Low. Controlled. Focused. Wren raised her radio. "Target building, possible secondary access point in the rear. Prepare to breach." Keaton moved with the team. One nodded to Wren. "On your go. 3, 2, breach." The back panel burst open with a kick. And what lay behind it wasn't wood. It was concrete. A staircase descended into darkness. Lights on. Guns up. They moved quickly. Thor led the way. At the base, a short hallway turned sharply left. The walls were bare. Silent. Then a voice. Faint. High-pitched. Crying. Wren's heart dropped. "Hold," she whispered. She stepped forward. And there, curled up in a corner of a cell with metal bars, was a child. Thin. Pale. Barefoot. Clutching a blanket. She looked up. Eyes wide. Terrified. Wren crouched slowly. "It's okay. We're here to help." The girl didn't speak. But she reached forward. Holding a familiar object. A teddy bear. Stitched at the foot. TR. The child was evacuated within 10 minutes. She wouldn't speak, not yet, but she clung to the bear and to Thor. She buried her face in his neck as they walked through the forest together, past the waiting units, and into the warmth of a blanket in the back of the cruiser. Wren sat beside her, gently holding her hand. "You're safe now," she whispered. The girl blinked slowly. And for the first time, she nodded. But something still gnawed at Wren. The timing. The condition of the bunker. The lack of anyone present. "Where's the driver?" she asked Keaton. He frowned. There wasn't one. And the van? Nowhere in the vicinity. Wren's brow furrowed. It was never about transport. This was a decoy. Keaton stiffened. "They wanted us to find her." Back at the command center, forensic teams examined the cell. Fingerprints were smudged. No identifying DNA. But the mattress, new. Clean. just delivered within 72 hours. Whoever ran this operation had cleaned house and left her behind. Wren stared at the report. They left her for us to find. Why? Parsons asked. Wren closed her eyes. To tie up loose ends. Or worse, to distract us. Keaton burst through the door. Turn on the news. They crowded around the department TV. A live feed played from Washington, D.C. A government whistleblower, face shadowed, voice disguised, had begun releasing files online. Files naming officials involved in the children's disappearance cover-ups. Records of transfers. Sealed adoption reports. Shelters that never existed. And behind it all, a private intelligence firm operating under a false humanitarian name. Keaton turned pale. They're burning it down. The safe houses were being purged. Victims scattered. Evidence wiped. But one girl, TR, had made it out. Because of Thor. That night, back in Ashwick, Wren sat alone in the operations room. The girl was safe. But the hunt wasn't over. She added a new line to the investigation board. Target abandoned site was deliberate diversion. TR intentionally left for discovery. Primary network still active. She sighed. Then looked down at Thor. You ready for the next step? He stood. Ears forward. Body still. Ready. The room smelled faintly of solder and coffee, burnt circuit boards, ozone, and adrenaline. Wren had flown with Thor overnight to Spokane, where the FBI's mobile digital forensics unit had set up a secure lab inside a former courthouse. After the rescue of the girl codenamed TR, the files on the thumb drive found in the Larrabee bunker were prioritized for full decryption. And they were working. Bite by bite, the digital barriers were falling. I've never seen anything like this, said Kira Vaughn, the analyst assigned to the case. She pointed at her screen. The data architecture is nested, each child has a unique ID, assigned handlers, and transit nodes. They ran this like an international shipping network. Wren leaned over. And the names? Encrypted aliases, initials, sometimes. But deeper in the metadata? They slipped. Kira tapped a blinking line of code. A window popped open. Dozens of names appeared. Some were expected, private security firms, ex-military contractors. But others? Wren stared. One name stood out. Elise Harmon. She was a federal caseworker, Wren whispered. Retired 4 years ago. She handled 2 of the missing children. Kira nodded. And signed 3 fake foster licenses linked to this network. Can you locate her? I already did. Elise Harmon lived in a gated community on the outskirts of Sandpoint. No family. No neighbors who visited. But she had a routine, morning walk, coffee by 9 a.m., mail at 11. Wren and Agent Keaton arrived just after sunrise, driving an unmarked car with federal plates. Thor sat in the back seat, unmoving. Wren stepped out and approached the house, heart hammering. Elise answered after 3 knocks. Elderly. Quiet. Clean gray hair and thin hands that trembled just slightly as she opened the door. Wren showed her badge. We need to speak with you. About? About Jeremiah Robinson. And Timothy Reynolds. The woman blinked slowly. Then stepped back. Come in. Inside, the house was spotless. Too spotless. No pictures. No decorations. Just clean, white walls and the smell of lavender. Wren sat across from her while Keaton stayed standing. Thor moved around the room once, sniffed at the hallway, then returned, his movements slow and deliberate. Elise took a sip of tea before she spoke. I knew they would come eventually. Wren leaned forward. So you admit it? I admit I helped place children with special circumstances into safe environments. That's what I was told. They weren't being adopted, they were being reprogrammed. Keaton stepped in. Reprogrammed how? Quieted, she said, her eyes empty. Made compliant. Wren's voice was sharp now. Did you see what they did to them? Elisa's hand trembled. They never let me. Outside, Thor began growling. Wren turned to the window just in time to see a black SUV parked across the street suddenly reverse and pull away. Keaton, she shouted. He ran outside. Too late. The SUV was gone. But Thor barked twice, loud, commanding. Wren turned to Elise. Who are they? Elisa's eyes were glassy now. I never knew their real names. But I knew the pattern. She stood, slowly walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder. Inside, names, photos, old internal memos, copies she'd kept. Insurance. Back at the lab, Kira sorted through Elisa's documents. And now the pieces came together. The network's real power wasn't in basements or bunkers, it was in bureaucracy. Fake group homes. Therapeutic shelters. Children assigned to phantom caregivers, then disappeared between transfers. And no one noticed. Because the paperwork was clean. One photo in the folder stopped Wren cold. A man with silver hair, thick glasses, and a politician's grin. Councilman Rupert Dane, Keaton said grimly. He's been a child welfare advocate for a decade. Helped pass the very act that diverted oversight from these kinds of placements. Wren stared at the name. Then we go public. Keaton raised a hand. Not yet. Why not? Because we don't know who else is in on it. If we tip our hand too soon, they'll scatter. Wren turned to Thor, who sat patiently near the window. She knelt beside him. They hid it all. But you found the first door. And now we've got the keys. Thor tilted his head. Wren stood. We dig deeper. By midnight, Kira cracked the final layer of the archive. It was a transport manifest. With dates. Routes. And one live marker. A scheduled movement 2 days from now. 5 children. Unknown destination. But the departure site? Eagle Ridge Detention Center. A temporary youth facility 3 hours south. Wren had never heard of it. But it was listed on the federal directory as active. She called the number. Disconnected. Keaton confirmed it, the site's been officially defunct since 2017. So why is it still in the database? Wren asked. Because someone never took it out. Or they didn't want to. Wren turned to the map on the wall. 5 children. 2 days. In a place that officially didn't exist. She looked at Thor. You found the door. Now let's kick it in. Eagle Ridge was a place that should have been dust and echoes. Closed in 2017. Decommissioned. Removed from the state's active site list. But somehow, children were still being processed through it. The manifest found in Elise Harmon's archive gave them a date, time, and 5 codenames tied to identifiers previously uncovered by the FBI, JX009, BR011, CN014, GP016, and MA017. No names. No photos. Just IDs and movement orders. Wren, Keaton, and a multi-agency tactical team met in a ranger station 20 miles north to plan. The satellite recon was clear, Eagle Ridge hadn't fallen apart, it had been maintained. The grounds were clean, the fencing intact, and the vehicles new. Someone was keeping it alive in the shadows. At 0400 hours, the team mobilized. Thor rode silently in the back of Wren's vehicle. His nose twitched slightly with the wind through the cracked window. As the van crested the ridge, the facility came into view. And Wren felt her blood chill. It looked exactly like what it pretended to be, a juvenile correctional site. Chain-link perimeter. Floodlights. Guard towers. But there were no state logos. No official signs. No flag. Keaton lowered his binoculars. Not government. It's a shell. Wren nodded. It's a prison run by ghosts. They parked in a shadowed gully a quarter-mile away and approached on foot. The perimeter was tighter than expected. Drones circled intermittently. Thermal cameras on the roof. We can't breach without an alarm, Keaton whispered. Wren looked at Thor. Let him guide. Thor stayed low, his movement like liquid across the forest floor. He stopped beside an old stone culvert that cut under the fence. Too narrow for a man, but just wide enough for a dog. He looked back once, then crawled through. The team waited. 1 minute. 2. Then 2 short barks. Clear. Inside, Thor had made it to the eastern side of the grounds. He crouched near a fuel tank, ears flicking at every sound. He'd picked up something. Scent. Movement. Fear. In the shadows, behind the maintenance shed, he found it. A child's shoe. Small. Faded blue. He sniffed it and whined. Wren climbed over moments later and froze when she saw it. She held the shoe in her hand. Then she looked at the building's nearest door. Time to go in. The first hallway smelled of bleach and cold steel. Lights buzzed. Cameras rotated. They moved silently through the west wing, where the cell blocks had once been. Now, converted classrooms. Cots stacked with folded blankets. A dry erase board with lists of names and behavior points. But no children. Wren whispered into her mic east wing. Go. Thor led them down a stairwell to a metal door marked T3. They bypassed the lock. Inside, a series of long, narrow rooms. Each with one bed. Each with a chain fixed to the wall. And in room 5. A girl. Curled under a blanket. Eyes wide, blinking in the dim light. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She whispered. Are you here for the others? For more rooms. For more children. Each with the same vacant stare. All under the age of 10. Wren radioed, we have the 5. All alive. Keaton's voice came back, copy that. Extraction team en route. Sweep the basement. In the basement, Thor halted at the final corridor. The scent overwhelmed him. Chemical. Sterile. And something else, fear. He growled low. Wren flicked on her light and found what no one expected. A surgical room. Clean. Prepped. Paperwork on the table. Not about care, but control. Neurological scans. Drug regimens. Personality conditioning scores. She whispered, they weren't just hiding the children. They were breaking them. One document on the desk had initials, TR. Timothy Reynolds. An old test subject. The paper outlined a treatment trial. Dosage. Behavioral shifts. Memory suppression. Wren felt sick. Footsteps above. Keaton radioed in, we've got movement, north fence. One SUV fleeing. They raced back up. Too late to stop the vehicle, but not too late to trace it. The plates were fake. But the GPS tag planted earlier by Keaton's drone? Live. The escapee was heading east. Toward a private airstrip. Thor barked once. Urgent. He stared at the main building's center office. Wren ran. Inside, the room had been wiped clean. but not perfectly. Behind the desk, Thor sniffed, then scratched. Wren peeled back the carpet. A small hatch. Inside, a laptop. Still powered on. She opened it. One folder. Final transfers. Encrypted. But open. She copied it to a flash drive. Then they heard sirens. The children were loaded into medical transport with trauma specialists on standby. One girl, the one who had spoken, held Thor's fur as they lifted her onto a stretcher. She whispered, "He smells like home." Wren crouched beside her. "You're safe now." She blinked slowly. "Not all of us are." Back in Ashwick, the drive folder was decrypted. Inside? A list of names. Over 50. Each tagged with destination codes. Dates. Handlers. And in the last row, Shadow Route, Final 7, Departure, 48 hours, Location, Red Spring. Wren drew a breath. This wasn't the end. It was just the next door. And Thor? He was already standing by it. Waiting. The operation board was eerily quiet. No chatter. No speculation. Just action. Everyone in the mobile command unit understood what Shadow Route meant now. Final transfer. Last movement. 7 children, each assigned a code instead of a name. Each scheduled to vanish within 48 hours, from a place known only by one chilling name. Red Spring. No town by that name appeared on any recent maps. No facility. No post office. But a geospatial overlay from 1992 revealed something else. A decommissioned mining town straddling the Idaho-Montana border, abandoned after an industrial collapse. Now off-grid. Now hidden. Now alive again, as the endpoint for a human ghost trail. Shadow Route doesn't mean stealth, Agent Keaton said. It means erasure. After Red Spring, these kids don't exist anymore, not legally, not physically. It's their final stop. Wren stood with Thor beside her. She tapped the paper map spread across the table. This old road here, Miller's Cut, is likely the only remaining access route. The rest was bombed out or closed during the fires in '03. Keaton nodded. We going hard. Nightfall. Multiple teams. 2 from the ridgeline. 1 from the ground. And Thor and I? Wren asked. You go where he takes you. At 2,100 hours, the convoy rolled out, 5 black SUVs and 2 armored personnel carriers moving in formation through the tree-lined silence. The terrain grew rough, the roads narrow. Branches scraped against the metal frames. Even the wind seemed to quiet. And finally, Red Spring. It wasn't a town anymore. It was a shadow. Tattered structures stood like teeth beneath the moonlight. The old schoolhouse, fire station, and train depot had all been converted. Not into homes, but into containment cells. Wren whispered into her mic, "We've got eyes on target compound." Thermal confirms presence inside multiple buildings. Preparing for breach. Then, from the back seat of SUV-2, Thor began growling. Low. Steady. Alert. Wren stepped out and unhooked his harness. You smell something, boy? He took off toward the eastern hillside, away from the main buildings. Wren followed without question. They climbed a gravel path into the woods, guided only by moonlight and instinct. Thor stopped suddenly. Nose to the ground. Sniffed. Then let out 2 sharp barks. He scratched at a tree stump, then beside it, found a metal latch embedded in the dirt. A disguised entryway. Wren radioed in. Possible alternate access tunnel. Sending coordinates. Proceeding inside. She opened the hatch. Beneath it, stairs. carved stone. Descending into blackness. She clicked on her tactical light and let Thor lead. The air grew colder. The smell, damp concrete, bleach, and copper. Then, voices. Soft. Muffled. They reached a metal corridor. At the end, a gate. Through it, cages. Not cells. Cages. 7 of them. In each, a child. Silent. Eyes wide. Shaking. Ren stepped forward. It's okay. I'm Ren. I'm here to help. One boy pointed to a panel near the wall. No alarms, Ren said aloud. Just keys. Thor sniffed at the base of a cabinet. Inside, a ring. 7 keys. Numbered. Matched to each cage. Ren opened them all. One by one. Some children stumbled. One collapsed. All of them reached for her. Above ground, Keaton's teams breached the schoolhouse and train depot, expecting armed resistance. But no one was there. Just beds. Cameras. Monitoring equipment. And ashes in metal drums, files burned in haste. A full wipe in progress. Whoever had been running Red Spring had been tipped off. And they'd left only one message. In the school's admin office, written in red marker across a chalkboard. You can save the 7. But you won't find the others. Keaton radioed Ren. They knew we were coming. She responded, I've got the children. All alive. No guards. No resistance. It was a drop. They gave them up? No, Ren said quietly, watching as Thor licked the hand of a crying girl. They left what they didn't need. Back at base, medical units took the children. Each one tested positive for a powerful sedative compound, enough to keep them compliant, barely conscious. Each had RFID chips implanted between the shoulder blades. Keaton pulled one aside. There are more of you, aren't there? The boy hesitated. Then nodded. How many? He whispered, hundreds. Thor sat in the corner of the triage room, eyes tracking every move. Ren knelt beside him. We've only scratched the surface. He looked toward the door. Waiting. Because the mission wasn't over. That night, the team decrypted one final file from a laptop found in Eagle Ridge. It wasn't coordinates or manifests. It was a video feed. Live. From an undisclosed location. A dark room. And a single child. Alone. Mouth taped. Eyes red. On the wall behind him, the words. This one you won't reach in time. Ren stared at the screen. Her jaw tightened. We find him. And Thor? He stood. Ready. The video feed was live. That much was certain. The timestamp in the bottom right updated every second. And the child, no older than 10, shivered with each breath. Duct tape over his mouth. Wrists zip-tied. Blood crusted beneath his nose. He didn't cry. Didn't beg. Just stared directly into the lens, as if daring someone to come. Ren's fists clenched. Keaton turned from his laptop. We traced the IP. Masked through 6 different proxies across Europe and the South Pacific. We're chasing echoes. Any location metadata? Ren asked. Stripped. But Kira found something. The analyst stepped forward with a printed still from the video. The fluorescent light flickers in a rhythm, 1.3-second strobe. That's common in Russian-made LED strips used in specific underground manufacturing facilities. Mostly shipped to Alaska, Ren interrupted. Exactly, Kira confirmed. Specifically, remote outposts built during the Cold War. Bunkers. some converted into private holdings. Keaton raised an eyebrow. You think they're holding him in Alaska? Wren shook her head. I think they want us to believe that. Thor began pacing. Then stopped. And stared at the monitor again. Wren crouched next to him. What is it? He growled, softly, then turned to the window. Wren looked up. Morning fog was rolling in. Too quiet, she whispered. She stepped to the door and scanned the outside. Nothing. Until Thor barked. Not just alert. Warning. Wren turned toward the communication stack. And saw it. A red blinking light on the drive bay. Transmission. Someone's trying to remotely wipe the server. Kira shouted. Kill the Wi-Fi. Keaton yelled. But it was too late. The screen flickered. The boy's image distorted. And then, black. No! Rewind the buffer. Wren snapped. Kira scrubbed the last 90 seconds before blackout. Pause there, Wren said, pointing to the moment just before signal loss. The boy had turned slightly, revealing something behind his shoulder. A faded stamp on the wall. 3 letters. RSP. Keaton leaned closer. What is that? Wren's eyes widened. Red Spring Processing. It's not over, she said. They didn't abandon the site, we only found the surface level. There's more below. By 6:30 a.m., Wren, Keaton, and the team returned to the Red Spring site with ground-penetrating radar. The town was deserted. Not even an echo remained. But Thor led them to the old coal plant at the far edge of the mine. He barked once. Then pawed the ground beneath a rusted iron plate. GPR confirmed it, an echo chamber beneath the earth. A sealed structure. Bring the drills, Keaton said. It took 2 hours to breach. When the panel finally cracked open, they found a shaft leading to a steel ladder and narrow stairwell, winding into darkness. Wren led the descent. Thor followed without hesitation. 50 feet down, they reached a locked door. Keaton picked the keypad. Manual override. Door opened. And there he was. The boy from the video. Alive. Still bound. Eyes wide with disbelief. Thor rushed forward, nuzzled the boy's hand as Wren cut the restraints. He didn't speak, his throat too dry, his lips cracked. But he smiled. And in a hoarse whisper, he said, "You came." Wren scooped him up. Always. The basement held more than just the boy. In sealed crates, they found archived files, paperwork, tapes, even body logs dating back years. Some were stamped discarded. Others said no match. Each crate contained pieces of the puzzle no one had wanted solved. They gathered it all. Every last page. Back above ground, Wren wrapped the boy in a thermal blanket. He clung to Thor, refusing to let go. Keaton returned from the final sweep. No others found. But there's no doubt, this was their command hub. Wren stared down at the valley. Then we dismantle it piece by piece. By nightfall, the media was buzzing. The child, identified as Leo Marsh, age 9, was declared missing 3 months ago from Oregon. He'd been presumed dead. Now he was a symbol. The tip of the spear. And the evidence found in the underground vault? It named people. Powerful people. Bankers. Lawmakers. Judges. All with sealed affiliations to the humanitarian front known as Nova Initiative. Which, in truth, was nothing more than a laundering front for the world's most discreet child trafficking network. Wren sat at her desk that night, head low, fingers trembling over the paperwork. She looked at the photos of each child they'd saved. Then opened her drawer. Inside was the original bear Thor had found. Jr. Jeremiah Robinson. She whispered, "We found them all. Except you." Thor stepped forward and rested his head on her knee. Wren stroked his fur. "No more hiding," she said. The next morning, Keaton received a message on an untraceable device. Just 3 words. One more left. The coordinates arrived without a sender. No metadata. Just a series of digits on an encrypted channel burned into Keaton's burner phone. 47.8722 degrees north, 116.9851 degrees west. A region buried in northern Idaho's Bitterroot Range. And 3 words beneath it. Jeremiah is waiting. Wren didn't hesitate. They packed light. No armored carriers. No SWAT. Just 2 snowmobiles, 1 extraction medic, Keaton, Thor, and her. As they cut through the forest, Thor ran alongside, unleashed, his body lean and fluid through the snow. His breath plumed in white arcs with each exhale. But he never slowed. He was leading again. The cabin appeared like a ghost, timber walls blanketed in frost, windows blacked out with wooden slats. No smoke from the chimney. No power lines. Just isolation. And silence. Wren raised her hand. The team stopped. She looked at Thor. "Is this it?" He sniffed the air. Then barked, 1 sharp signal. "Yes." Wren approached the door. It wasn't locked. Inside, the air was warm, heated by a wood stove in the corner. The room was sparse, a bed, a desk, a cupboard of dry goods. And a boy. Sitting in the corner. Back against the wall. Watching. She stepped inside slowly. His eyes were blue, piercing. Hair dark. Thin frame. He didn't speak. Wren dropped to 1 knee. "Jeremiah?" He nodded once. But then, he said something she didn't expect. "They told me you'd come. The dog too." Wren glanced at Thor. He stepped forward and slowly sat beside the boy. Jeremiah didn't flinch. Instead, he reached out and touched Thor's ear. "He was mine," Jeremiah whispered. "Before all of this." Wren blinked. "What do you mean, he was yours?" Jeremiah looked at her. Calm. Older than his years. "Before they took me. Thor was a pup. My father trained him. He was meant to be my protector. But they split us up." Wren's breath caught. "You remember him?" Jeremiah nodded. "He remembers me too." Thor lowered his head and nudged Jeremiah's shoulder, gently, like an old friend remembering something deep. Keaton entered the cabin, rifle lowered. Place is clear. No signs of occupancy beyond the boy. No surveillance. Jeremiah stood slowly. "They left me here on purpose." "Why?" Wren asked. "Because I wasn't supposed to live," he said quietly. "They called me a loose thread." Wren took his hand. "You're not a thread. You're the key." The boy led them to a loose floorboard beneath the bed. Inside, a ledger. Names. Locations. Financial records. An entire network, scrawled in coded shorthand. Jeremiah had memorized it. "They taught me patterns. Numbers. I started to understand how they moved the others. So I wrote it all down." Keaton's eyes widened. This could dismantle every arm of the Nova Initiative. Jeremiah nodded. "It will. If you listen." They extracted by dusk. Back in Ashwick, the ledger was decrypted line by line. And just as Jeremiah said, it was a master key. Each cell location. Each handler alias. Each transaction. Wren stood before the press days later. No uniform. No badge. Just truth. Behind her, projected on a large screen, were the names of every missing child they had recovered. And those they hadn't. "This is not about one boy," Wren said. "This is about a system that failed children in silence. Until now." Jeremiah lived under federal protection, but he wasn't afraid anymore. He began speaking, testifying, leading others who had survived similar captivity. He became a symbol of defiance, of recovery, of remembering. Thor never left his side. Months passed. Trials began. The Nova network was dismantled in waves, each arrest like pulling a thread from a monstrous tapestry. Judges, bankers, soldiers. No longer untouchable. Because one dog pulled at the first thread. And never let go. 1 year later, on a crisp fall day, Wren stood beside Jeremiah and Thor on the rebuilt porch of a new home. He ran his hand through Thor's fur and smiled. "I think he waited all this time just for me." Wren nodded, her voice soft. "I think we all did. Because some stories don't begin with heroes. They begin with a whisper. A paw print. A locked basement. And a dog who refused to forget."